Karim's forearms tapped nervously on the desk as he stared at the holographic display. The insectoid broker had been in the contracts business for 20 years, but he had never seen anything like this. The job posting glowed in front of him, offering 4 times the standard payment. 4 times. And still nobody wanted it. The contract was simple enough on paper. A criminal syndicate needed a small human military team eliminated. 8 humans. Just 8. They were causing trouble on a border world called Threshold 7, breaking up smuggling operations and disrupting business. The syndicate was willing to pay a fortune to make them disappear. Karim had sent the offer to every major mercenary company in the sector. The responses came back quickly. Too quickly. Declined. That was from the Krellian Fang Legion, one of the most feared groups in known space. Not interested. The Vraxian Death Watch, who normally took any job if the price was right, we respectfully pass. Even the Borderland Reapers, who had never turned down a contract in their 15-year history. Karim clicked through the messages, his mandibles clicking in frustration. 23 companies, 23 rejections. Some didn't even bother to explain. Others gave vague excuses about scheduling conflicts or other commitments. But Karim knew better. He had been doing this job long enough to know when someone was lying. His mind went back to a conversation from 3 months ago. He had been at a station bar celebrating a successful deal when an old Vraxian commander named Cormac sat down next to him. The reptilian warrior was covered in scars, each one a story from decades of fighting. They had talked about business, about contracts, about the changing nature of mercenary work in the galaxy. Then Karim had mentioned a rumor about a new high-paying job involving human targets. Cormac's eyes had gone dark. He leaned in close, his breath smelling of fermented korash. Listen to me carefully, broker. Never ever take a contract against human special forces. I don't care how much they pay. Some money isn't worth earning. Karim had laughed it off at the time. Humans were Deathworlders, sure. But they were just one species among many. Tough but not invincible. Nothing was invincible. Now, staring at his screen full of rejections, Cormac's words echoed in his mind. But Karim needed this commission. Business had been slow. He had bills to pay, a reputation to maintain. If he could close this deal, it would set him up for the entire year. He just needed someone brave enough, or desperate enough, to take the job. He sent out a new wave of messages, this time to smaller companies. Independent operators. Groups that might not know the rumors or might not care. 3 days later, he got a response. Vexthor was the commander of a mid-sized mercenary company. 50 soldiers, all experienced, all well-armed. The Krellian warrior had a decent reputation, though not top tier. His company took jobs that the bigger outfits passed on, and they did them well. They met in Karim's office on the guild station. Vexthor was tall and muscular, his scales a deep green color. His eyes were sharp and intelligent. He listened as Karim explained the contract. 8 human soldiers, Vexthor said slowly. And you're offering quadruple rate? That's correct, Karim said. The syndicate is very motivated. Why have the big companies turned it down? Karim had prepared for this question. They're overcommitted. Busy with other contracts. You know how it is during this season. Vexthor stared at him. The Krellian's eyes didn't blink. You're lying. Karim's antennae twitched. I assure you, I'm not stupid, broker. Nobody pays 4 times rate unless there's a problem. What's the problem? Karim was silent for a moment. Then he decided on partial truth. The targets are human special forces. Some companies have a policy against engaging them. Because they're dangerous? All soldiers are dangerous. Vexthor leaned back in his chair. I've fought humans before. Pirates, smugglers, even some of their regular military. They're tough, I'll give them that. But they're not magic. They die like everyone else. These aren't regular military, Karim said carefully. I understand that. Special forces. Elite units. Every species has them. Vexthor's clawed hand drummed on the armrest. My company has 50 soldiers. We have modern weapons, good equipment, proper training. You're telling me 8 humans are worth 4 times the normal pay? The syndicate sets the price, not me. The syndicate is scared, Vexthor said.
Why? Karim didn't answer. Vexthor stood up.
For a moment, Karim thought he was leaving. Then the Krellian turned back. Double the rate you offered. 8 times normal pay. That's excessive. That's my price. The syndicate is desperate, and you're desperate to close this deal. I can see it on your face. Vexthor crossed his arms. 8 times rate, half up front, and we take the job, Kurim calculated quickly. Even with his reduced commission at that price, he'd still make enough to solve his problems. I'll contact the client. The syndicate agreed within an hour. Meanwhile, on Threshold 7, Taemin sat on the roof of an abandoned warehouse, watching the sunset through binoculars. The border world had 3 moons, and they were all visible in the evening sky, hanging like pale ghosts above the horizon. Anything? Hana's voice crackled in his earpiece. Quiet, Taemin replied. The shipment didn't show up. They're getting smarter. Or they're getting ready to leave, Quan added from his position inside a nearby building. The tech specialist was monitoring local communications, scanning for any sign that the syndicate was packing up. Taemin lowered the binoculars. His team had been on Threshold 7 for 3 months now. Ghost Brigade's mission was simple: dismantle the syndicate's operations piece by piece until they had nothing left. No dramatic raids, no big battles, just patient, careful work. They had destroyed 2 warehouses, intercepted 4 shipments, and arrested 11 mid-level operators. The syndicate was bleeding money and resources. Another few weeks and they would collapse completely. Contact from base, Quan said suddenly. Captain Yuna wants to talk. Encrypted channel. Taemin pressed a button on his wrist device. A small hologram appeared, showing the face of a woman in a naval uniform. Captain Yuna was their handler, their link to command back home. Lieutenant, she said. Her face was serious. We have a problem. What kind of problem? Intelligence picked up chatter. The syndicate hired mercenaries. A Krellian company. 50 soldiers. They're coming for you. Taemin was quiet for a moment. When? They'll arrive within 48 hours. Maybe less. Do we extract? That's your call. High Command says the mission is important but not worth losing a team over. Taemin thought about it. 3 months of work. 3 months of careful planning and execution. If they left now, the syndicate would recover. They'd move their operations somewhere else and other people would have to start over. We stay, he said. Yuna nodded. She had expected that answer. Then you have 2 days to prepare. The mercenaries won't know the terrain like you do. Use that. Understood. The hologram flickered off. Taemin stood up and stretched. Behind him, the sun was disappearing below the horizon, and the temperature was starting to drop. He activated the team channel. Everyone back to the safe house. We need to talk. 20 minutes later, all 8 members of Ghost Brigade were gathered in the basement of an old factory. Taemin explained the situation. 50 mercenaries, well-armed, professional. Sung Ho, the oldest member of the team, laughed. It was a dry, rough sound. They actually took the contract? Someone actually said yes? The syndicate must have paid a lot, Hana said. She was checking her weapons, making sure everything was clean and loaded. They always do, Sung Ho replied. And the mercs always regret it. Quan looked up from his laptop. You've dealt with this before? Twice, the old soldier said. Both times the mercenaries gave up and went home. Well, the ones who survived gave up and went home. Taemin pulled up a map of the area on a portable screen. We have 2 days. That's enough time to set up something special. Quan, I need you to find their communication frequencies. If they're using standard mercenary protocols, we can hack them. Already on it. Hana, I want surprises ready. Nothing lethal at first. We'll escalate if we need to. The explosives expert grinned. I have some ideas. They worked through the night preparing. Outside, the 3 moons climbed higher in the sky. Somewhere in orbit, a mercenary ship was approaching, full of soldiers who had no idea what they were about to face. Kurim sat in his office, looking at the confirmed payment in his account. He felt relief wash over him. The deal was done. The mercenaries were on their way, but somewhere in the back of his mind, Cormac's warning whispered again. Some money isn't worth earning. He pushed the thought away and went home. The mercenary ship landed on Threshold 7 2 days later, exactly when Captain Yuna said it would. Vexthor walked down the ramp with his second-in-command, a Krellian female named Rixta. Behind them, 50 soldiers filed out in organized rows, carrying enough weapons to start a small war. This planet smells, Rixta said, her nostrils flaring at the industrial air. Every border world smells, Vexthor replied. He was looking at a data pad, reviewing intelligence the syndicate had provided. The humans were last seen in the industrial district, Sector 9. That was 3 days ago. They'll have moved by now. Probably. But they'll leave traces. Humans always do. Vexthor divided his forces with quick efficiency. I want 3 teams of 10 for the search. 2 teams for perimeter security. The rest stay here with the ship. The teams spread out across the city. They used scanners, sensors, and old-fashioned investigation. They talked to locals, checked abandoned buildings, followed power usage patterns. By the end of the first day, they had narrowed the search area to a cluster of old factories on the east side of the district. They're in there somewhere, Vexthor said, studying a holographic map. The buildings were spread across several blocks, connected by underground tunnels and maintenance passages. Perfect place to hide. We could surround it, Rixta suggested. Starve them out. That would take weeks. The Syndicate wants this done quickly. Vexthor zoomed in on the largest structure, a massive processing facility that hadn't been used in years. We hit them fast and hard. 30 soldiers for the main assault, 20 for the perimeter. If they run, we catch them. The attack was planned for dawn. Vexthor believed in the old ways. Strike when the enemy is tired, when their guard is down. His soldiers moved into position in the pre-dawn darkness, using night vision equipment to navigate the silent streets. At exactly 0500 hours, they breached the factory. The entry was textbook perfect. Charges blew the doors. Soldiers poured in through 4 different entry points simultaneously. They moved through the building in coordinated teams, weapons ready, covering each other with professional precision. The factory was huge inside. Old machines sat in rows like sleeping giants. Conveyor belts stretched into the darkness. The ceiling was somewhere far above, lost in shadows. Clear, one team leader reported. Clear, said another. Clear. 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 They moved deeper into the building. Vexthor was with the main group, his weapon ready. Something felt wrong. The factory wasn't just empty. It felt staged. There were supplies here. Food containers, water bottles, equipment. Someone had been living here recently. Sir, one of his soldiers called out. You need to see this. Vexthor walked over. On a large table, someone had set up a map of the entire district. Marks and notes covered it, showing patrol routes, timing patterns, blind spots in the Syndicate's security. It was detailed intelligence work. They left in a hurry, Rixta said, studying the map. Or they wanted us to find this, Vexthor muttered. That's when the lights went out. Every light in the factory died at once, plunging them into complete darkness. The mercenaries activated their night vision immediately, bathing everything in green light. Stay in formation, Vexthor ordered. This is a standard tactic. They're trying to... A voice came over his communication system. A female voice speaking perfect galactic standard. You should have stayed home. Vexthor spun around trying to locate the source. The shooting started, but it wasn't coming from outside their position. It was coming from inside, from behind them, from angles they thought were secure. The humans had been in the building the whole time, hidden in places the mercenaries never checked. Taemin had positioned his team in the rafters, in maintenance tunnels, behind false walls. They had watched the mercenaries enter, watched them spread out, waited until they were deep inside the factory. Now they attacked from every direction at once. Hana dropped from a ceiling vent, landing behind 2 mercenaries. She fired twice, quick and accurate. Both soldiers went down before they could turn around. She was already moving, rolling behind a machine as return fire filled the air. Quan had hacked into the mercenary communication network. He could hear their confused orders, their panic as they realized they were surrounded. Team 3 is trying to retreat to the east exit, he reported over the team channel. Sung-Ho, they're coming your way. The old soldier smiled in the darkness. He had set up near the exit behind a barricade of old metal crates. When the mercenaries came running, he waited until they were close. Then he opened fire. The battle was chaos. The mercenaries had better equipment, more soldiers, superior firepower. But Ghost Brigade knew the terrain. They knew every corner, every hiding spot, every escape route. They had spent 2 days turning the factory into a trap, and the mercenaries had walked right into it. Vexthor tried to rally his forces. Fall back to the main entrance. Organized retreat. But Quan had taken control of their communication system. He started sending false orders, contradicting Vexthor's commands, creating confusion. Some mercenaries retreated. Others pushed forward. The formation fell apart. Taemin moved through the shadows like a ghost. He fired, moved, fired again. He wasn't trying to kill everyone, just enough to break their morale. He could see the mercenaries starting to panic, starting to make mistakes. "Sir, we need to leave," Rixta shouted. She was bleeding from a wound on her arm. "This is a slaughter." Vexthor wanted to argue, wanted to stand and fight. But he was a professional. He knew when a battle was lost. "All units, retreat to the ship." Now the mercenaries ran. They left their equipment, their wounded, everything. They just ran. Ghost Brigade let them go, picking off stragglers but letting the main force escape. When the sun came up an hour later, Vexthor counted his losses. 12 soldiers dead. Another 8 wounded too badly to fight. In 15 minutes of combat, he had lost almost half his effective force. His soldiers were shaken. These weren't fresh recruits. These were experienced fighters who had seen combat across a dozen worlds. But none of them had experienced anything like this. "They were in the room with us," one soldier said, his voice trembling. "The whole time. We cleared that building. How were they in there?" Vexthor had no answer. Rixta came to him as the medics worked on the wounded. "We should leave this planet. Cancel the contract. The syndicate paid us half up front. If we leave now, we'll have to return it. That's 2 million credits. Better than dying here." Vexthor looked at the factory in the distance. The humans were still in there. He could probably find them again if he tried. But would the result be any different? He sent 2 soldiers back into the factory to retrieve the dead. They came back pale and shaking. "What?" Vexthor demanded. One of them held out a data pad. "This was left on the wall, sir." Written in blood. Vexthor looked at the screen. Someone had painted a message on the factory wall, using the blood of his fallen soldiers. The words were in Galactic Standard, clear and simple. Lesson 1. We don't fight fair. Below it was a symbol, the insignia of Earth's Ghost Brigade. Vexthor stared at the message for a long time. His second-in-command stood beside him, waiting for orders. "What do we do?" she asked quietly. The Krellian commander thought about walking away. He thought about the money they'd have to return, the damage to his reputation, the questions from other companies. He thought about how it would look to run from 8 humans. Then he thought about the 12 dead soldiers. He thought about the 15 minutes of chaos in that factory, the feeling of being hunted in the darkness. "We adapt," he said finally. "They beat us once. It won't happen again. We'll study them, learn from this, change our tactics. And if we lose again?" Vexthor didn't answer. He turned and walked back to the ship, the bloody message still glowing on the datapad in his hand. Inside the factory, Timon watched the mercenaries through binoculars. They were regrouping, treating their wounded, arguing among themselves. "Good. That meant they were scared. Think they'll leave?" Hana asked. She was sitting on a crate, drinking water. "No," Timon said. "Not yet. They've invested too much. They'll try again. Then we'll be ready." Sung-Ho walked over, his old rifle slung across his back. "That was a good fight, clean, efficient." "We got lucky," Timon replied. "They weren't expecting us to be inside. Next time they'll be more careful. Next time we'll be more creative." The old soldier grinned. "That's what we do." Quan was already setting up his equipment again, preparing for the next round. The mercenaries would come back. They always did. And Ghost Brigade would be waiting. Outside, the 3 moons of Threshold 7 faded as the sun rose higher. It was going to be a long day. 3 days passed. Vexthor used that time to rethink everything. No more high-tech approaches, he told his officers in a meeting. They hacked our systems. They used our own equipment against us. We go back to basics. He spread a physical map on the table, actual paper, not a hologram. We split into small teams, 5 soldiers each. We hunt them the old way with eyes and instincts. No centralized communications they can hack, just short-range radios and hand signals. Rixta studied the map. That leaves us vulnerable to being picked off 1 team at a time. Only if they can find all our teams. We'll have 12 groups spread across the city. They can't be everywhere at once. Vexthor had also called in reinforcements. 30 more mercenaries arrived from another company he had worked with before. It cost him most of his profit from the contract, but he didn't care anymore. This had become personal. 80 soldiers against 8 humans, one of the new arrivals said. Good odds. Don't underestimate them, Vexthor warned. These aren't regular soldiers. They think differently. What Vexthor didn't know was that Ghost Brigade had already noticed the reinforcements arrive. Quan had sensors positioned around the spaceport. He tracked every ship that landed, identified every new face. They're bringing in more mercs, he reported to Taemin. 30 additional. That puts them at about 68 effective soldiers after their losses. Taemin was cleaning his rifle, methodical and calm. Then we change tactics too. How? We stop hiding. We start hunting. Hana looked up from her explosives work. About time. The change in strategy was subtle but significant. Instead of staying in one location, Ghost Brigade split up. They moved through the city in pairs, using the civilian population as cover. Not as hostages or shields, they would never endanger civilians. But the presence of ordinary people made it harder for the mercenaries to act freely. Taemin and Sung-ho took the market district. Kwon and another operator named Gitai covered the transport hub. Hana paired with a specialist named Bo-ra, working the industrial zones. They weren't just evading anymore. They were collecting intelligence, identifying mercenary positions, and beginning a new kind of warfare. Kwon started with psychological operations. He had complete access to the mercenary communication networks now. He could see their messages, hear their plans, and even access their personal files. He sent a message to one mercenary's personal device, a family photo from the soldier's home world, with text underneath, "Your family misses you. Go home." To another, he sent combat footage from the factory fight, showing exactly how his team had been ambushed. The message was simple: you were lucky to survive. Next time you won't be. Within a day, the mercenaries were paranoid. They started checking their devices constantly, worried about what message would come next. Some turned their devices off, which cut them off from their own network. Others kept checking, becoming distracted and jumpy. Hana took a different approach. She left presents for the mercenary patrols. The first team found a box outside their temporary base. They scanned it carefully, checked it for explosives, and finally opened it. Inside were their own weapons, the ones taken from dead soldiers in the factory. They had been cleaned and polished with a note attached. "You'll need these." Another team triggered a trap that covered them head to toe in bright orange paint. It wasn't dangerous, but it marked them. Everyone in the city could see them. They had to return to base and clean up, humiliated. A third team found their vehicle's tires deflated with small holes that would take hours to patch. By the time they finished, Ghost Brigade had already moved to a new location. None of these actions were lethal. That was intentional. Ghost Brigade was sending a message: we can hurt you anytime we want. We're choosing not to. Vexthor saw what was happening. His soldiers were falling apart mentally. They weren't being killed, they were being terrorized. Every patrol came back with a story. Every team reported strange incidents. The humans were everywhere and nowhere. "This is psychological warfare," he told Rixta. "They're trying to break us without fighting." "It's working." Vexthor slammed his fist on the table. "Then we force them to fight. We find something they can't ignore." He studied the map again. The humans were protecting the civilians, that was clear. They moved among the population, but never put anyone at risk. Maybe that was their weakness. "No," Rixta said, reading his thoughts. "We're mercenaries, not war criminals. We don't threaten civilians." "I wasn't going to suggest that." Vexthor pointed to a supply depot on the map. "But we can set a trap. Make them think we're targeting something important. Draw them out." 2 days later, a mercenary team moved on a warehouse that supposedly held medical supplies for the local hospital. They made no secret of their approach. They wanted to be seen. Sung-ho watched from a rooftop half a kilometer away. "It's a trap." "Obviously," Taemin replied through the radio. "The question is, do we spring it? They want us to think they're threatening the hospital's supplies. Get us to come running. But if we don't, they might actually destroy it out of frustration." Taemin thought for a moment. "We spring the trap, but on our terms." Ghost Brigade had been watching the mercenaries for days. They knew their patterns, their tactics, their weaknesses, and they had noticed something important. Vexthor always kept his command element in a secure location, directing operations from a distance. "Kwon, where's their command post?" "Old Hotel Northside. 6 guards outside, probably more inside. Vexthor and his top officers are in there." "Then that's where we hit." While most of the mercenary forces were positioned around the warehouse trap, Ghost Brigade struck at the command center. All 8 operators working together for the first time since the factory. They hit at dawn, fast and precise. Hana's explosives took out the exterior guards' communications before they could warn anyone. Sung-ho and 2 others secured the entrance. Taemin led the main assault team inside. The mercenaries inside fought hard. They were professionals after all, but they had been sleeping, relaxing, thinking they were safe. Ghost Brigade moved through the building like a storm, room by room. Vexthor heard the shooting from his command room on the top floor. He grabbed his weapon and headed for the door, but it exploded inward. Taman stood in the doorway, rifle raised. For a moment, the two commanders stared at each other. "You can surrender," Taman said calmly. Vexthor's hand moved toward his weapon. Taman's rifle tracked the movement. "Don't," the Krellian commander froze. Around him, his officers were either dead or unconscious. The shooting downstairs had stopped. It had been less than 5 minutes since the attack started. "How many of my soldiers did you kill?" Vexthor asked. 3, the rest are alive. We tried to avoid killing when possible." "Why?" "Because you're not our enemy. You're just doing a job." Taman lowered his rifle slightly. "A job you should never have taken." Rixta burst through a side door, weapon raised. Hana was right behind her, faster. The explosives expert hit the Krellian female with a stun blast that dropped her instantly. "She'll be fine," Hana said. Taman never took his eyes off Vexthor. "Your company is down to about 25 effective soldiers now. We could have killed all of you. We still can. Or you can take your people and leave this planet. The Syndicate paid us. The Syndicate is about to be arrested. We've been gathering evidence on them for months. In 3 days, Galactic Authority ships will arrive and take them all into custody. You're working for criminals who are already finished." Vexthor said nothing. He was doing the math in his head. 25 soldiers left out of 80, dozens of casualties, all from 8 humans. And now those humans were offering to let him walk away. "You're letting me go? I'm giving you a choice. Leave now or stay and see what happens when we stop being polite." Taman stepped back from the doorway. "Tell them what happens when you hunt humans. Tell them what it costs." Vexthor looked at his unconscious second-in-command, at the devastated command room, at the human soldier who could have killed him but didn't. "We'll leave," he said quietly. "Good. You have 6 hours. After that, if any of your soldiers are still on this planet, we'll assume you made the wrong choice." Taman turned and walked out. Ghost Brigade had already disappeared from the building by the time Vexthor made it downstairs. The Krellian commander gathered his surviving soldiers. They packed quickly, efficiently, desperate to leave. The wounded were loaded onto the ships. Equipment was abandoned. Within 4 hours, every mercenary was off Threshold 7. As their ship lifted off, Vexthor stood on the bridge, looking down at the planet below. He had lost 55 soldiers, some dead, others too injured to fight again, and he had never even come close to winning. "Where do we go?" the pilot asked. "Crosspoint Station," Vexthor said. "I need to talk to the guild." On the surface of Threshold 7, Taman stood outside the old hotel, watching the mercenary ships disappear into the sky. "Think they'll come back?" Bora asked. "No," Taman said. "They learned the lesson." "What lesson?" "That some fights aren't worth the money." He turned away from the sky. "Come on, we still have work to do. The Syndicate isn't going to arrest itself." Ghost Brigade disappeared back into the city, leaving no trace they had ever been there. Above them, the 3 moons of Threshold 7 hung in the morning sky, silent witnesses to another lesson taught. Crosspoint Station floated in neutral space, a massive structure that served as a meeting ground for mercenaries from across the galaxy. It was here that contracts were negotiated, reputations were built or destroyed, and the unwritten rules of the mercenary code were enforced. Vexthor arrived 3 days after leaving Threshold 7. His ship docked quietly, and he walked through the station with his head down. Word had already spread. Other mercenaries watched him pass, some with pity, others with barely hidden contempt. The Mercenary Guild Council had called a meeting. It was rare for them to get involved in individual contracts, but what happened on Threshold 7 had implications for the entire profession. The council chamber was a circular room with seats arranged in tiers. 12 guild masters sat in judgment, representing the major mercenary organizations. They were from different species, Krellian, Vraxian, Thulian, and others. Each had decades of experience. Vexthor stood in the center of the circle, alone. The guildmaster who spoke first was an old Vraxian named Cormac. His scales were scarred and faded with age. He had been fighting for 50 years and survived more battles than most commanders ever saw. "Tell us what happened," Cormac said simply. Vexthor told his story. He didn't make excuses or try to hide his failures. He described the trap in the factory, the psychological warfare, the final assault on his command post. The council listened in silence. When he finished, another guildmaster spoke. Her name was Telsara, a Thulian with 4 eyes and skin that changed colors with her emotions. Currently, it was a neutral gray. You lost 55 soldiers out of 80, she said. In less than a week, against 8 opponents. Yes. And at no point did you inflict significant casualties on them. We killed 3 humans in the final engagement. Maybe wounded others. We never saw their dead. Because there probably weren't any, said a third guildmaster. A massive creature named Borthak. Humans protect their own. They carry out their dead and wounded. You would never know their losses unless they wanted you to. Vexthor said nothing. It was true. Cormac leaned forward. I warned the broker about this contract. I told him never to take jobs against human special forces. He didn't listen. Now you've paid the price. I didn't know, Vexthor said quietly. I had fought humans before. You thought they were just another species, Telsara interrupted. That's what everyone thinks. Until they face human special forces and learn the truth. What truth? The guildmasters looked at each other. Then Cormac stood up. Come with me, the old Vraxian said. All of you. It's time for some education. He led them to a private room deep in the station. Inside was a large holographic projector. Cormac activated it and images began to appear in the air. 3 years ago, he began. The Creel hunters took a contract against a human special forces team. 24 elite soldiers, the best the Creel Dominion could offer. They were tracking a 6-person human unit on a contested mining world. The hologram showed the mining world, then shifted to images of the Creel hunters, large. Powerful warriors with natural armor plating. The Creel had superior numbers, better equipment, and knew the terrain. They had every advantage. Cormac's voice was heavy. 24 hunters entered the mine complex where the humans were hiding. Zero came back out. The hologram showed the aftermath. An empty mine. No bodies, no evidence of a battle. Just gone. The humans had collapsed the mine on top of them? Someone asked. No, the mine was intact. The Creel were taken one by one in the darkness. The humans hunted the hunters. When a rescue team finally went in a week later, they found all 24 Creel dead. Each one had been killed efficiently, professionally. The human team was never found. Vexthor felt his scales prickle. Cormac changed the hologram. 2 years ago, the Vraxian Death Watch, the unit I commanded before I retired, took a contract to eliminate a human SEAL team. 8 humans, 12 of my best soldiers. We cornered them in an orbital station. The new images showed a battle in zero gravity. The Vraxians were using heavy weapons, breaching doors, moving with military precision. We had them trapped, Cormac continued. Or so we thought. The humans hacked into our suit's IFF systems. That's identification, friend or foe. They made us register each other as enemies. In the confusion, we started shooting at our own people. By the time we realized what happened, 3 of my soldiers were dead from friendly fire. The humans escaped while we were reorganizing. They turned you against each other, Telsara said softly. Yes, without firing a shot. Cormac's colors darkened with shame. We chased them for another week. Lost 2 more soldiers. Finally, they contacted us directly and offered us a deal. Leave the station and we all live. Keep hunting them and nobody survives. We left. He changed the hologram again. The lesson of Proxima, as it's known in the guild. A mercenary company called the Broken Fangs tried to leverage hostages against a human special operations team. They took 20 civilians prisoner and threatened to execute them unless the humans surrendered. The hologram showed a tense standoff, mercenaries with weapons, frightened civilians, a human negotiator on a video screen. The humans negotiated for 6 hours, Cormac said. The mercenaries thought they were stalling, trying to buy time. They were wrong. The humans were gathering intelligence, figuring out exactly where every hostage was, where every mercenary was positioned, what weapons they had, everything. The hologram shifted to show the assault. It was so fast it was almost hard to follow. Human soldiers appeared from multiple directions simultaneously. The mercenaries were hit from behind, from above, from angles they never expected. The entire rescue took 4 minutes, Cormac said. All 20 hostages freed unharmed. 37 mercenaries killed. The human team suffered 1 injury. A soldier broke his arm in the assault. He kept fighting anyway. The room was silent, but why? Vexthor asked. What makes them so different? They're just one species. We have elite units too, Telsara spoke up. We've studied this question extensively. The answer is complex, but it comes down to several factors. She activated her own holographic display. It showed a rotating image of Earth, the human homeworld. First, humans are death-worlders. Their planet has high gravity, dangerous weather, predators, diseases. They evolved to survive hostile environments. But that's not unique. Many species come from difficult worlds. The image changed to show human soldiers in training, diving underwater, jumping from aircraft, crawling through mud. Second, human special forces don't just train in one environment. They train in all environments. Water, air, space, underground, urban, wilderness. They're taught to adapt to anything. The image changed again, showing different special forces units, teams with different equipment, different specialties, different approaches. Third, humans don't have one type of special forces. They have many. SEALs, Rangers, Delta Force, Ghost Brigade, Spetsnaz, SAS, and dozens more. Each one specializes in different types of operations, and they all share information, tactics, lessons learned. Borthak, the large guildmaster, rumbled his agreement. I fought human Marines once. Just regular infantry, not even their elite units. They were tough but beatable. I won that fight, he paused, but I would never, ever take a contract against their special forces. Because those humans volunteered for the most dangerous work. They wanted to be there. That's the key, Cormac said. Motivation. We fight for money. Our soldiers are professionals, yes, but they're mercenaries. They have limits to what they'll risk. Human special forces operators are volunteers who chose the hardest path. They fight for each other, for their mission, for something bigger than money. He turned off the hologram. There's a reason we're having this discussion. The Guild has been debating for months whether to make it official policy. After what happened to you, Vexthor, I think the time has come. Telsara stood up. The Galactic Mercenary Guild hereby declares that contracts against human special operations forces are permanently blacklisted. No member company will accept such jobs. Any broker who attempts to arrange such contracts will be expelled from the Guild. This is effective immediately, Cormac added. The word will go out to every mercenary organization in known space. We will not fight human special forces. Not for any price. Vexthor felt something like relief wash through him. What about my reputation? My company? You survived, Telsara said. Many don't. You learned the lesson and lived to tell about it. That takes courage. More importantly, you had the wisdom to retreat when you realized you couldn't win. Your company can rebuild, Cormac said. Recruit new soldiers. Take other contracts. But stay away from humans, especially their special operations units. The meeting ended. Vexthor left the chamber feeling lighter than he had in days. He wasn't alone in his failure. He was just the latest in a long line of mercenaries who learned the same lesson. In the station's bar that evening, he found Rixta. His second-in-command was drinking something strong, staring at nothing. The Guild blacklisted all contracts against human spec ops, Vexthor told her. Good, she said. Maybe others won't make our mistake. They sat in silence for a while. Around them, other mercenaries talked and laughed, discussing contracts and campaigns. None of them mentioned Threshold 7. That was the mercenary code. You didn't mock another soldier's failures. You learned from them. The sun was setting on Threshold 7 when Ghost Brigade finally completed their mission. The Syndicate had been dismantled piece by piece, exactly as planned. Galactic Authority ships arrived in orbit, and hundreds of agents swept through the city making arrests. Taemin watched from a rooftop as the last Syndicate leaders were led away in restraints. 3 months of careful work finished. The mission was done. Good job, everyone, Captain Yuna's voice came through his earpiece. Transport is on the way. You'll be back home in 3 days. Understood, Taemin replied. Ghost Brigade gathered at their safe house that evening. 8 operators tired but satisfied. They had completed another mission without losing anyone. That was what mattered most. Hana was cooking something on a portable stove. It smelled terrible but tasted surprisingly good. She had a talent for making food out of whatever was available. The team sat around an old table, eating and talking quietly. The mercenaries are gone? Gite asked. According to intel, they left the sector entirely, Quan said. He had been monitoring communications even after the mercenaries retreated. Their commander went to Crosspoint Station. The Guild held some kind of meeting about us. About humans in general, Sung Ho corrected. He was the oldest among them. old enough to remember when human special forces first started gaining their reputation in the galaxy. This happens every few years. Some mercenary company thinks they can take us on. They learn otherwise. The word spreads. Bora poured water for everyone. I felt bad for them, she admitted. At the end, they were just doing their job. So were we, Taman said. We gave them chances to leave. They kept coming. That's on them, not us. Still, Bora said, all those casualties. Could have been worse, Hana pointed out. We tried to avoid killing when possible. Most of them will recover. They'll just have scars and stories. Sung-Ho laughed, a rough sound. And nightmares. Don't forget the nightmares. Captain Yuna arrived an hour later. She was older than most of them, with gray in her hair and the bearing of someone who had spent decades in military service. She joined them at the table, accepting a cup of the terrible-tasting coffee Hana had made. High Command is pleased, she said. Clean mission, minimal collateral damage, objectives achieved. You'll all be getting commendations. And vacation, Hana asked hopefully. 2 weeks. Then there's another situation developing near the frontier expanse. Details are classified, but they'll need a team like yours. The operators groaned good-naturedly. There was always another mission. Quan had been quiet, working on his laptop. He looked up suddenly. Captain, there's something you should see. The Mercenary Guild just issued a formal declaration. All contracts against human special operations forces are now officially blacklisted. Yuna raised an eyebrow. That's new. They've had unofficial policies before, but never made it official. What does it mean? Bora asked. It means, Sung-Ho said, that we've officially become the boogeyman, the thing that scares the people who get paid to be scary. Taman didn't say anything. He was thinking about Vexthor, about the moment in the command room when the mercenary commander realized he had lost. There had been no anger in that realization, just weary acceptance. Vexthor was a professional and he knew when to walk away. Why do you think we're so effective? He asked the group. Against the mercenaries, I mean. They had more soldiers, better equipment, more resources. But we won anyway. Why? Different answers came from around the table. Better training, Gitai suggested. Surprise and psychological warfare, Hana said. We fight dirty, Quan added with a grin. Sung-Ho shook his head. Those are all true, but they're not the real reason. Then what is? Bora asked. The old soldier thought for a moment. We're humans, he said finally. That's the reason. We come from a planet that tried to kill us every day. Gravity that makes us strong. Weather that makes us tough. Predators that made us smart. We evolved to survive impossible situations. Lots of species are death worlders, Taemin pointed out. True. But we're not just survivors. We're adapters. Put a human in a new environment and they'll figure out how to live there. Give them a problem and they'll find 10 different solutions. Show them a rule and they'll think of ways around it. Captain Yuna nodded slowly. There's something else too. Something the other species don't really understand. What? You're volunteers. She looked around the table at each of them. Every single human in Special Forces chose to be there. Nobody forced you. You weren't drafted or assigned. You volunteered for the hardest, most dangerous work in the military. So? Hana asked, so that means something. A mercenary fights for money. A regular soldier fights because it's their job, but you fight because you decided this is what you want to do with your life. You fight for each other, for your mission, for your unit. That's a different kind of motivation. Quan was looking at his laptop again. There's more chatter coming through. Stories from other mercenary groups. I'm seeing references to other failed contracts against human spec ops. How many? Taemin asked. Dozens over the last 10 years. Maybe hundreds. Quan scrolled through the messages. It's all anecdotal, but the pattern is clear. Anytime mercenaries go up against human special forces, they lose. Not always, Yuna corrected. There have been successful operations against human targets, but those were against regular military units or civilian installations. Never against special operations. She pulled up her own data pad and showed them a file. Naval intelligence has been tracking this for years. We're not the only ones who noticed the pattern. The other species have too. The file showed analysis from various alien governments and military organizations. All of them reached similar conclusions. Human special forces were exceptionally dangerous opponents. The reasons varied: superior training, psychological factors, tactical flexibility, cultural traits. But the result was always the same. Do we want this reputation? Bora asked quietly. Being the ones everyone fears? It's not about fear, Taemin said. It's about respect. They respect what we can do. That respect keeps us alive. Sung-ho raised his cup. To being human, the galaxy's favorite nightmare. They all laughed and raised their cups, even Yuna. Outside, across the city, regular life was returning to Threshold 7. The syndicate was gone. People could go about their business without fear. Ghost Brigade had done their job quietly, efficiently, leaving the planet better than they found it. On Crosspoint Station, in a bar full of mercenaries, someone was telling a story about the Threshold 7 contract, how 80 soldiers went up against 8 humans and lost. The other mercenaries listened with expressions ranging from disbelief to grim recognition. An old human veteran sat in the corner listening. He was retired now, but he had served with Ghost Brigade years ago before age forced him out. He knew some of the people in the story. A young mercenary, fresh and eager, approached him. Is it true? The youngster asked. Are human special forces really that dangerous? The veteran looked at him with tired eyes. What do you think? I think stories get exaggerated. 8 against 80 sounds impossible. It does, doesn't it? The veteran took a drink. But it keeps happening. And you know what? The humans involved probably think it's just another day at work. Nothing special. Just their job. So how do you beat them? The veteran smiled sadly. You don't. That's the lesson. You don't take those contracts. You don't fight human special forces if you can avoid it. Because they don't fight for money. They don't fight for glory. They fight for each other, and that makes them more dangerous than any weapon. The young mercenary left, looking thoughtful. The veteran finished his drink and stood up. Across the bar, he saw Kurim, the disgraced broker, sitting alone. Their eyes met for a moment. The broker looked away first, shame evident on his insectoid features. Back on Threshold 7, Ghost Brigade prepared for extraction. They packed their equipment, cleaned their weapons, erased all traces of their presence. By the time the transport ship arrived, it would be as if they were never there. Taemin stood on the rooftop one last time, watching the 3 moons rise. Somewhere out there, mercenaries were telling stories about this planet, about the humans who fought here, about the lesson learned. He thought about Vexthor and hoped the Krellian commander would take that lesson to heart. There was no glory in fighting humans. Only survival or regret. Ready to go? Hana asked from the rooftop door. Yeah, Taemin said. I'm ready. They left Threshold 7 that night, lifting off quietly into the darkness. The planet fell away below them, 3 moons shining like silver coins in the void. In the weeks that followed, the word spread across the galaxy. The Mercenary Guild's declaration was public now, distributed to every station and outpost. It was simple and direct. Contracts against human special operations forces are permanently blacklisted. Any member found accepting such work will be expelled from the guild. This policy is non-negotiable and takes effect immediately. Below that, in smaller text, was an explanation. Human special forces represent a unique challenge that standard mercenary operations cannot effectively counter. Accepting such contracts results in unacceptable casualty rates and operational failures. For the safety of guild members and the reputation of the profession, these operations are forbidden.